I finally reached the Arctic, and what better way is there to celebrate that than installing a diesel heater, even though it's July and the temperature as of right now is kind of nice. But for the most part, I have actually installed the heater due to logistical issues, because when I received the heater and a bunch of other stuff, I had this huge package, and with that inside of the car, I have nowhere to live. So it is, like planned, installed underneath the passenger seat, because there is an original storage compartment underneath that seat. And this entire box is made out of aluminium, meaning it's a safe place to install it. So it's not a fire hazard, but it's also extremely easy to access everything. But since this car has a petrol engine, I'm still missing a fuel tank for the heater. So I need to order something a bit more safe and neat looking than the one that comes with this kit. And although I could install this, I would not be happy with how I would end up filling it and how it looks, to be honest. Underneath this box, there's a perfectly flat aluminium floor, meaning I've been able to install the heater flat with the exhaust and air intake and fuel intake easily accessible right underneath the car. And I can't install the fuel lines before I know where I'll end up placing the tank. And I'm also waiting for a longer tube for the air intake and the exhaust before I install those in their final position. The tube feeding warm air into the cabin I've just placed on the front of the seat box alongside the control panel. And when all of this is installed, that's the only things I'll keep inside of that box for ease of mind, safety, and like mentioned, easy access. But I will also drill a hole in this top plate and have a vent on this. And this box is by no means airtight, but the seat is resting on this frame above the plate with a gap in between, meaning I can have a vent in this, giving access to more air for the heater. And the reason why I'm sacrificing that much storage for the heater is because I'm installing it in a way making it possible to use it whilst driving, but also using it whilst camping without having to set up anything at all. And in addition to the control panel on the seat box, there's also a physical remote plus a Bluetooth function for my phone, meaning I can turn the heater on while still in bed. And the heater is also self-adjusting to a bunch of different altitudes, but this is by no means a fancy or expensive heater. This is a cheap knockoff, which is very common in a lot of builds, because in theory I can replace this like 10 times for the same price as one expensive heater. So this just makes more sense for my budget. And since my car is tiny, I went with the smallest version, which is smaller in size, but it also has less output, which is the 2 kilowatt version. And by the way, it turns out that dealing with these packages all over the country whilst traveling full time is kind of a nightmare. So I was stuck in one town for almost a week in rain, waiting for a delayed package. And basically everything I did that week was installing door stoppers. Because the original door stoppers for these only stop the door from flying open and bending itself, but I also wanted something which is lockable. And after receiving those packages, I actually fled the scene because that part of the country was full of rain and bugs. So I ended up driving about 900 miles further north. But before I did that, I had to do a somewhat untraditional service on the car. Changing oil on a car like this is an absolute breeze in comparison to a lot of modern cars where you need to dismantle a bunch of stuff before you even reach the bottom of the engine. And before I started this adventure, there was a couple of things I was dead set about. For example, I wanted to do all of the service and maintenance work myself, not just when I built the car, but also to keep the car moving. And that was easy when I was renting a garage to build the car, but as soon as you hit the road, even the simplest of things becomes somewhat of a chore. And because of that, in one of the bags on the roof, there's a tarp, which sole purpose is only to be used when I'm working underneath the car. Because not only do I like to keep campsites as I found them, but I also feel like a parking lot needs to be respected when it's obviously not mine. But the service manual does obviously not say that I'm supposed to change the engine oil now at 1600 miles, but I've gone through a full engine rebuild, so I kind of had to. So I laid down the tarp on a parking lot outside of a hardware store, and then I parked the car on top of that. Because although it's easy to replace the oil on this, when you replace the oil filter, it's always kind of messy. And to make stuff worse, I dropped the drain plug inside of one of the cans completely full. But I did eventually fish that out of the jug so I could close off the hole in the bottom of the engine. And apart from the oil filter leaving a mess over the front prop shaft, this job is pretty straightforward, even if it's done on a parking lot outside of a store full with people. And two separate guys with old cars even swung by to make sure that I didn't need any crucial help, and they were happy to hear this was a planned service and not a major breakdown. The tarp and the tools got cleaned off and put back into their designated spots inside of the car, and after filling the engine I cranked it over to fill up the oil filter, and then I shut it off again, followed by filling it up again to the correct level on the dipstick. And the only downside to me doing this myself in a parking lot is I need to find a place tomorrow where I can drop off the oil properly. But whilst traveling in a normal country like this, that is not a problem at all. And the spot where I changed the oil is absolutely spotless, which is not even the case when I just park. And the last thing remaining now is I'll turn the car on, let it become fully warm, check for leaks, turn it off, let it cool off, recheck the levels, and then I can start to use the car normally. I've actually thought about doing this for a while now, but I'm really glad I waited until I had an evening like this with absolutely perfect weather. And although it doesn't make any difference at all, I guess the view from this parking lot is not too shabby. And off camera, I checked the oil levels on the gearbox and the overdrive, and they were both spot on. But the transfer case was missing about 100 mil, which is now filled back up again. And on this transfer case, I'm well aware that the leak is coming from my bottom pan. And now I just have to wait forever until this is cold. The problem now is it's really hard to tell the level on the oil because it's completely clean, but that is spot on underneath the high mark, so I'm good to go. And now I need to find a place to sleep and make some food. And something worth noting right now is I'm above the Arctic Circle, and this is the lighting at 10 o'clock in the evening. And whenever I'm this far north during summer, I actually prefer to flip my day and night every now and then to experience this kind of lighting throughout the whole night. And with that being said, I'll make a cup of coffee because right now I'll start that transition, flipping day and night. And apart from the lighting, one of the reasons why I like flipping day and night is because this is kind of a tourist spot, which means that if I flip day and night, I'll be able to experience a very popular place all by myself. Well, all by myself, apart from the bugs during the night. And that's like half the cup of coffee gone, so I'll just pretend this is a cup of espresso instead. I decided to make a tiny espresso instead of an actual cup of coffee. Something else which is kind of unusual at this location is the lack of wind, because after all, I'm on a group of islands in the Arctic Ocean. So having midnight sun like this without wind is top notch. And up until midnight, I'll be doing some house cleaning, maybe do some work, and then I'll fire up the car and start driving. And I won't be driving far, but I'll stop at a few different locations, and then I'll also try to look for a nice place to sleep where I will be unbothered during daytime, because after all, I'm flipping the script. And I have, like mentioned, done this flip a bunch of times before, and it's something which is really fun to do for a while, but you do get kind of messed up when you go into a grocery store and in your head it's early morning, but then people will greet you and say like, good evening or good night. So I'll do this for maybe 1 week and then I'll flip back. And it was really smart of me to drive further north to escape all of the bugs. Said no one, ever. But it's kind of like the situation with bad weather. It doesn't really matter if you have the right mindset and some sort of gear to cope with rain or bugs. And right now it's not even mosquitoes, it's these tiny ones that I'm not even sure what it's called in English. But it's not like the mosquitoes you have a bit further north, which is quite literally trying to eat you. So for that reason, this is the evening attire, and it's also the 11 o'clock lighting. So I'll tidy up the car a bit, and then I'll head off in maybe an hour or 2 hours. Although it's very bright outside, closing in on midnight, the temperature does in fact decline. But me being me, I also kind of prefer the cold and fresh air during the evenings and nights. I've now done like 2,500 miles with this, and it's getting to the point where I feel like if I continue on using it like now and also maintaining it in the same manner, I don't see any reason why this should not live forever. And instead of dreaming about a bigger engine in this, I actually think the novelty of keeping the original one alive is cooler and slower. I've also done some actual calculations finding out how much fuel this is using as it is right now. Original engine, fully loaded, doing highway speeds, passing mountains and everything combined over a 500-mile period. And it's doing a tiny bit more than 20 miles per gallon UK units, or 14 liters per 100 kilometer. And to be honest, that's actually not terrible considering this is fully loaded and it's also like driving a brick through a wind tunnel. The concept of midnight sun is actually kind of weird if you've never experienced this before. And right now it's 20 minutes till midnight and the sun is still way above the horizon. Very warm. I am kind of used to this by now, but I do remember the first time I ever saw the midnight sun and I had the exact same feeling as I had the first time I saw the Northern Lights. And yes, it is just the sun, but it's still kind of neat being able to see it for 24 hours straight. And that right there is as low as the sun will be today or tomorrow, or well, 5 minutes. So now I'll just let this heat up for a bit and then I'll do a slow and easy drive in this direction. So right now it's past midnight and this is when the really nice lighting starts, because instead of being a regular sunset, this is now an extremely early sunrise. I think I'll be parked in the shadows for a couple of hours, but the sun is rising, so it will get here eventually. But right now I need to make some food, and for the next couple of days this will be like lunch hours, because right now it's 1 hour past midnight and I will probably wake up sometime in the evening. And there's also a lot of evidence of wild roaming cows here, so there is a tiny chance I'll wake up with company, but that's honestly not a problem. And today I will obviously become a bit tired because I need to push through the hours where I usually sleep. But in a couple of days this will be running smooth as butter, probably just in time for me to turn it back around. And I'll also set up the bed now because I won't be driving around anymore tonight, because I'm still not adjusted to being fully awake during these hours, meaning I'd be driving around with no sleep, which is not good. Even though it obviously feels a bit safer driving around when it's not dark outside, but at the same time you are probably more tired than you realize. I'll just leave this as it is because I won't be sleeping anytime soon either way, so I'll get started with the food. Being without a fridge, there's a couple of things I need to get rid of because I can't keep them here. So I do have some cured ham and some chorizo that I'll slice up and put together with some chopped up tomatoes and probably some pasta, and that will be a nice little something. And after being without direct sunlight for like 20 minutes, it's finally back, which is kind of nice because it's not cold per se, but it's not exactly warm either. I added a bunch of water to the tomatoes, and that will intentionally boil off and at the same time cook the pasta. And when that is done, I'll add the cured meat and the sausages. So this is not exactly an Italian dish, but among those lines, if the Italian guy was homeless. And like always, this is way more than what I thought it would be, but I have all night. So now this is pretty much done. So I'll put this to the side and make a cup of tea. I actually would not mind a bit more sun now, but it's probably another hour until I can actually start to feel the warmth from the sun. I'm guessing it's maybe between 5 and 10 degrees right now. It's been a few hours. It's now 4 o'clock and the sun is finally starting to heat up everything. But at the same time, there's not really that much for me to do right now. For very obvious reasons, I'm going to need the blinds to sleep tonight. Tonight, whatever. Although I'm not really bothered by sleeping in daylight. This is more of a privacy thing, because sleeping during the day means there's a great chance that someone might end up just walking around the car. And these do not block out all of the light, but at least it does not feel like I'm sleeping on display. And with all of these up, I'll be able to sleep in the dark. But I'm kind of sure that there's a lot of people that could absolutely not sleep in this light. And being able to just fall asleep wherever, whenever, is actually one of the skills I have that I'm really grateful for. But something not that nice is with the warm sun, all of the bugs are starting to wake up again. So I'll just close this for now. And although I'm not really able to sleep now, I'm still able to use my laptop inside the car, away from the bugs. And it's also Sunday now, so I'll be able to use the Starlink and do a proper test run, posting something on YouTube. So I'll be more certain about how well this actually functions for my needs later tonight. And I also need to make a proper mount for this so I can leave it outside whilst the wind is blowing. But for now, I'll just leave it as it is. And now it's almost 5 o'clock, so for the rest of my day, I'll get inside of the car and work on whatever you're watching right now and get that published by the end of the day. And I'll try to stay awake 3, maybe 4 hours, so that when I do fall asleep, I'll be able to sleep until the evening today. Like I said, flipping the sleep schedule like this kind of screws with everything. Anyway, good night, aka good morning, whatever.